In 793, Lindisfarne's destruction entered written memory before anyone created a single European opinion about Vikings. The surviving reactions came from particular clerics, courts, travelers, and communities facing very different northern visitors. Their words describe fear, but also strategy, theology, admiration, bargaining, and political opportunity. Even the label Viking can mislead because medieval authors used other names and categories. English texts might call attackers heathens, Danes, Northmen, or simply an army. Frankish writers often identified Northmen while recording fleets, tribute demands, and royal responses. Irish annals used changing terms that scholars must interpret within their own chronology. Eastern and Byzantine sources classified northern travelers through still different political and geographic frameworks. The question, therefore, narrows immediately from Europe to many observing communities. The famous first impressions survive disproportionately from monasteries with reasons to preserve catastrophe. Lindisfarne was a sacred center, not an ordinary target in contemporary Christian understanding. Alcuin, writing from Charlemagne's world, treated the attack as punishment requiring moral reform. His concern was not ethnography, but the spiritual condition of Northumbrian Christians. That purpose made pagan violence meaningful inside a biblical pattern of warning and correction. Other churchmen similarly described invaders through religious opposition because monasteries produced and kept texts. The victims' terror was genuine, although theological language shaped how events became history. Their experiences must be approached through indirect records and material consequences. Anglo-Saxon Annals gradually changed tone as attacks developed into sustained campaigns and political settlement. Entries record ships, armies, wintering battles, tribute, agreements, and shifts of allegiance. Raiders ceased appearing only as sudden punishment and became actors within English power struggles. The Great Army, arriving in the 860s, demanded a vocabulary of occupation and negotiation. Kings fought it, paid it, made peace with commanders, and sometimes exploited divisions within it. Communities confronted requisition, destroyed property, disrupted authority, captivity, and changing obligations. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle presents these developments from West Saxon political perspectives preserved in later manuscripts. Its entries remain invaluable, but they do not offer a neutral view from all English regions. Alfred's successes receive a narrative weight connected to the dynasty behind the chronicle tradition. The treaty associated with Alfred and Guthrum reveals another kind of perception. Its clauses treated Scandinavian leaders as partners capable of oaths, boundaries, compensation, and Christian commitment. Enemies defined as heathen raiders could become baptized rulers inside recognized legal relationships. That transformation did not erase violence. It altered the political category applied to particular people. Coinage under Scandinavian rulers pushed the change further by adopting familiar Christian and royal forms. Money communicated authority to subjects who needed usable currency more than heroic ethnic labels. English observers could fear an army while accepting a Scandinavian king's administrative rule. Contradictory attitudes were practical responses to changing circumstances, not medieval confusion. Across the Channel, Frankish annals documented another long education in northern warfare. Early reports emphasize coastal and river attacks, reaching wealthy churches and political centers. The Seine, Loire, and other waterways carried fleets deep into contested royal landscapes. Frankish authors condemned attackers while also exposing failures among Carolingian rulers. Payments bought departures, but they could encourage return or redirect violence elsewhere. Fortifications, bridges, local defense, and political negotiation grew alongside military responses. The Siege of Paris in the 880s became a test of defenders and royal legitimacy. Abbo of Saint-Germain later composed a Latin poem about that siege, blending testimony with literary purpose. His work praises resistance and shapes participants according to learned conventions. It can illuminate perceptions without functioning as an unedited transcript of events. Frankish rulers also granted land to selected Scandinavian leaders under negotiated conditions. The agreement associated with Rollo and Charles the Simple eventually supported Norman power around Rouen. Later, Norman histories embellished Rollo's story, so contemporary evidence and dynastic memory require separation. Still, political accommodation proves that Northmen could be imagined as defenders after arriving as enemies. Ireland offers an even less binary field of observation. Annals record attacks on churches, captures, battles, settlements, rival fleets, and alliances. Norse bases developed at places including Dublin, where maritime trade and political power became intertwined. Irish rulers fought Scandinavian leaders, fought one another, and formed alliances across supposed ethnic lines. Terms conventionally translated as foreigners could distinguish groups, but their meanings varied by source and period. Later narratives sometimes organized conflict into sweeping national or religious struggles. The Battle of Clontarf in 1014 illustrates that danger especially clearly. Contemporary alignments crossed simple Irish against Viking boundaries, despite later patriotic retellings. Medieval Irish opinion included hostility toward raiding and domination, without excluding alliance, intermarriage, or urban exchange. Captured people experienced these networks from positions that elite political narratives rarely describe. Slave trading connected Irish sea violence with markets and households across a wider region. For victims, the raiders' identity mattered alongside the immediate loss of freedom and community. For rulers, the same armed group might appear as threat, hired strength, trading partner, or ally. Southern observers encountered Northerners outside the monastery raiding framework altogether. Byzantine emperors employed Varangian guards whose northern associations became linked with service and loyalty. The term Varangian covered changing groups and should not be treated as a permanent ethnic label. Imperial authors judged them through court politics, military usefulness, and familiar ideas about foreigners. Scandinavian travelers left runic memorials connected with journeys eastward and service abroad. Those inscriptions preserve family commemoration, not Byzantine public opinion. Placed beside imperial writing, however, they reveal relationships more complex than raider and victim. Latin Christian writers also admired Scandinavian courage when it served approved rulers or religious causes. Classical ethnographic habits encouraged authors to characterize northern peoples through climate, bodies, and temperament. Inherited literary categories could shape description before any individual encounter occurred. Arabic language observers provide another set of perspectives connected to trade and travel. On the 10th century Volga, Ahmad ibn Fadlan encountered traders identified as Rus. His account describes appearance, hygiene, commerce, ritual, and social hierarchy with fascination and criticism. Scholars debate how those Rus identities related to Scandinavian origin and Eastern cultural settings. Ibn Fadlan wrote for an audience shaped by Islamic learning and his diplomatic mission. Features that violated his expectations received special attention, just as monasteries emphasized sacrilege. Different observers selected what appeared strange within their own moral worlds. Archaeology complicates these written judgments without revealing private opinions directly. Fortified sites show organized responses to sustained military pressure in England and Francia. Scandinavian-style objects in settlements may indicate migration, exchange, imitation, or mixed communities depending on context. Burials can register changing customs, but grave goods do not provide the deceased person's complete identity. Coins bearing Christian imagery under Scandinavian authority reveal adaptation visible in daily transactions. Place names and language preserve longer contact that chronicles focused on emergencies, often compressed. These traces show how former outsiders became neighbors, landlords, spouses, subjects, and rulers. Acceptance was never automatic, and legal distinctions could preserve unequal status or remembered origin. Nor did settlement make earlier violence insignificant to communities carrying losses. No survey can recover what most medieval Europeans privately thought. Literacy was restricted, preservation uneven, and surviving texts favor institutions with durable archives. Authors copied earlier phrases, served patrons, and fitted events into religious or political arguments. Even words translated as Viking, Dane, or Northman may conceal distinctions obvious to their first audiences. The safest answer is therefore plural and conditional. Monks attacked at sacred sites often represented raiders as pagan instruments of catastrophe. Royal annalists increasingly saw armies whose leaders could be defeated, paid, baptized, or granted territory. Merchants and urban communities encountered northerners through exchange as well as coercion. Imperial courts could value foreign warriors precisely because their outsider status made them useful. Later descendants reshaped raiding ancestors into founders, saints' enemies, dynastic forebears, or national adversaries. One missing discovery would sharpen this picture more than another heroic narrative. A substantial archive from an ordinary trading settlement could reveal how daily negotiations named and categorized newcomers. Until such voices appear, medieval Europe's Vikings remain many observed groups rather than one universally imagined enemy.